Hank woke up to find that his phone displayed 10 missed calls and just as many voicemail messages. The area code was unfamiliar to him. After receiving numerous spam calls from Chinese robo-marketers, he had set his phone to direct calls from unknown numbers straight to voicemail. Usually, Beijing Betty didn't leave any messages. With his daughters still asleep, he started listening to the voicemails. That's when he discovered that his wife, Randy, wasn't in Jacksonville, Florida, visiting her parents and sister for the weekend as she had claimed. Instead, she was in the burn unit of a hospital in Boulder, Colorado. Hank paused, absorbing the information. His phone was also alerting him to news updates. Normally, this was annoying, but he had never bothered to turn off the notifications. The word fire lingered in his thoughts. He remembered seeing a news headline that included fire and Boulder when his phone lit up that morning. He navigated to the phone's homepage and saw the headline, "Devastating Forest Fire Destroys Boulder Suburb Overnight." Interesting. Hank would be the first to admit that he wasn't always the sharpest tool in the shed, but he could only think of one reason why his wife, Randy, of 8 years would lie about her weekend plans. He deliberately slowed down, no need to hurry. He brewed a pot of coffee. The girls wouldn't be awake for at least another hour. He carried coffee to Randy's workspace in the dining room and took her laptop. It turned out it was now password protected with a password he didn't know. But Randy was often forgetful and careless, so he searched for a password written on some scrap of paper and found it in the bottom drawer of a small writing desk. Upon gaining access, he discovered that she hadn't even closed her email browser. She had merely shut down her computer, relying on her new password and evidently her confidence that Hank wouldn't invade her privacy. All assumptions that existed in this family before this morning no longer applied, Hank thought, and it was true, everything had changed. She had been seeing her college ex-boyfriend, Josh Turner, at his house in Boulder on the weekends when Josh's wife was away. This was the guy who had broken Randy's heart, falling in love and marrying another woman. It seemed that over the years, he developed guilt about the abandoned woman, or just lust. There weren't many details in the emails, mostly just confirmations of arrival times. Hank speculated that they poured their hearts out to each other over the phone. One interesting fact surfaced: her parents and sister knew and agreed to cover up her affair. This wasn't in the emails but in open chats that were also left unlocked. They all thought she should marry Josh, whose family had money. Hank was frozen, as if watching a car crash in slow motion, and couldn't look away. He took the time to take a deep breath and calm down a bit. It was necessary, or he could have punched holes in the drywall of the house. He called the hospital in Boulder. When they answered, he instinctively asked if Josh Turner was a patient. When they asked Hank to define his relationship with Mr. Turner, he said he was a friend. The operator then said she couldn't provide any information. That response certainly confirmed they had a patient named Josh Turner. Next, Hank called the number left in his voicemail. It was a direct line to the hospital's reception. After introducing himself, the clerk told him that Randy had been admitted with third-degree burns over 80% of her body, including lung damage from smoke inhalation. The fire had apparently erupted suddenly in the drought-stricken area, rapidly spreading in strong winds and cutting off the only escape route. Over 100 homes were burned and destroyed. "Sorry," Hank said, "this can't be my wife. She's in Jacksonville, Florida. You must have incorrect information." He hung up. Of course, she was in Boulder, he felt it, but he wasn't going to make it easy for anyone. He checked his wife's computer again and found Josh's social media page. Randy had indeed made him one of her friends. There, he discovered Josh's wife. She had posted a public message from their family home in San Diego, asking for prayers because she had just learned that her husband had been hospitalized with severe burns in Boulder. Time to get those prayers answered by the God of vengeance, Hank thought, contacting Josh's wife in a chat to introduce himself and share what he had found. He left his phone number. Sometime later, finishing his coffee, he noticed another missed call. He didn't recognize the number, but there was a voicemail from Josh's wife, Tina. Hank called her back. "Miss Turner, is your name really Tina?" he had to ask. Yes, she sighed. When I got married, there was a fear that this would happen to the woman Josh rejected. I married for love. Now it's just a complete breakdown. You must be Ree's husband? Yes. I knew about her when Josh and I met. Lately, he's been acting strangely, but I didn't understand why. Now it all makes sense. Do you feel the same way? Kind of. I knew about Josh, but Randy didn't behave suspiciously, so I didn't notice anything. You take it calmly, Hank. You're talking calmly, too. I take pills, Tina said. Josh is badly burned. They've already put him in a medically induced coma. I lost composure when I heard that. Now I'm just in shock, especially knowing the truth about what really happened. What's your wife's story? Severely burned, that's all I know. I told them it couldn't be her because my wife is in Florida. Tina chuckled. Oh, the hospital is calling again. Let me answer and stay in touch. She hung up, and Hank saved her number in contacts to prevent the spam blocker from sending the call to voicemail. A new call came in from Ree's father, Bob. Bob must have seen the news and gotten worried. Hank? A pause followed. Hank and Bob never liked each other, and Hank reciprocated Bob's dislike, but they always maintained the appearance of polite communication. Now, politeness seemed absent. Have you heard from Randy? Hank paused. This question must have cost Bob dearly from a moral standpoint. Why would I hear from her? She's upstairs in her old room, isn't she? Spending time with you, your wayward wife, and your other daughter? Bob understood that Hank knew. He sighed. Hank, she really loves you. I know we've never gotten along. Bob, Hank interjected, his voice getting louder, this is nonsense. And before you continue talking and annoy me even more, know this, I understand perfectly well that I never pleased you. You were sure I wasn't worthy of your daughter, but Josh was. Your wife and your other daughter treated me horribly too. I put up with it to keep the peace, but now it's over, and I want to make it clear, if you were standing in front of me right now, I'd punch you in the mouth until you spat out teeth. Damn you and your family too. Hank hung up. There was really nothing more to say. However, to save time, he blocked Bob's, as well as his mother-in-law's and sister-in-law's, phone numbers. Dad, why are you yelling? His daughter Nicole asked, entering the kitchen. Her younger sister Rebecca followed her. Dad said a bad word, Rebecca announced. Really? Nicole asked. Say it again, Dad, I didn't hear that. Hank had to smile. What was the bad word, Becky? She frowned. I can't remember. You probably misheard. Now, let's have breakfast. Today is pancake day. Each had 3 pancakes and some orange juice. Then both girls watched cartoons. After all, it was a Saturday morning. The phone rang again. It was Tina Turner. The pills aren't working. What, the pills? I told you about the ones I take to calm down. Well, they're not working. Why are you saying this, Miss Tina Turner? In the hospital, they connected me to the place where Josh is in intensive care. The nurse put me on speaker. She thought hearing my voice might help Josh, even though he's in a coma. And I lost it. I yelled that his girlfriend was also badly burned and probably going to die, and that it was his fault. I said that after they both get life insurance payouts, we're going on a round-the-world cruise and spending all our time in bed to settle the score. His heart almost stopped when he heard me, even though he's in a coma. Yes, it's hard to say if my scream caused it or if it was just a coincidence, but he pulled through. I'm sorry, she paused. Sorry? What are you sorry for? Are you sorry his heart almost stopped, or are you sorry he's still alive? All of Hank's instincts leaned toward cruelty, but he kept himself in check. Just sorry that things turned out this way. Me too, he replied. After a pause, Hank asked, tell me about this cruise we're going on. Sorry, I don't know where that came from. But I'm still curious. I bet that's true, she paused. Are you really interested, Hank? I've seen on social media that you have a beautiful face, but I haven't really followed you on the internet. If I had to spend time getting revenge, sleeping with someone, you'd be a pretty good choice. Why are you asking? Do I stand a chance? I don't know, she answered slowly. I just spent time, since I realized he was cheating, wondering what's wrong with me. Seeing that you're interested makes me feel a little better. You don't look too bad yourself anyway. Hank snorted. Thanks, it's nice to hear that, even if my wife clearly preferred your husband. Maybe the problem isn't with us. I somehow think the same. Tina Turner paused again. Have you ever wondered why they did this? I guess it's because they thought they could get away with having an affair. That sounds too simple. Well, what else could it be? Tina decisively said, listen, we both have a lot to digest, but let's stay in touch. We're the only two people who understand what the other is feeling right now. Fine, fine. I need to buy Bermuda shorts for the cruise, and swim trunks, Hank replied. She chuckled. At least you're making me feel better. Maybe the pills are working. Book a room with a balcony, she added, chuckling. Until then, Hank replied. They hung up. Hank noticed another voicemail. It was from the hospital again. He called back and connected with the nurse in Ree's room. She also put him on speaker. It must have been a different nurse from the one caring for Josh, but they all seemed to follow the same set of medical industry instructions. Mr. Henry Becker? Yes, I'm Nurse Young. We're on speaker now. I'm in the intensive care burn unit of the hospital. Your wife is here. She's severely burned and in a medicated coma. She's next to me. We hope the sound of your voice might help, even though she's unconscious. Hank thought that the hospital would have to update its standard procedures for dealing with a patient's family after today, but he had to ask, why do you think that? I wasn't there when she was brought in. One of my friends was there. She said your wife clamped onto her arm like a vice and wouldn't let go until they realized what she was demanding, call my husband. So sorry, your wife fought the team with all the strength she had and wouldn't let them do anything until they assured her they would deliver the message. Okay, too little, too late, Hank thought. What should I say? He asked. Tell her everything that's on your heart, the nurse naively said. All right, thought Hank. The game begins. Listen, you pathetic liar, he shouted over the phone to his wife. I hope you go through agony and spend eternity in hell with Josh, who's also burning, just so you know. I'm going to spend all the life insurance money I received to seduce Josh's wife, and I will never forgive you. The line cut off, and the nurse probably didn't listen when he started, but it seemed she snapped out of it. Hank realized that, at this rate, he wouldn't achieve his goals in terms of emotional balance. Someday, he would probably feel some guilt for what he said, but today was not that day. Dad, what does the deuce mean? Becky asked, holding her teddy bear. Oh, my little one, he replied, it means to deceive someone. She pondered this with a serious expression. When will Mom come home? That question really angered him, the need to tell his daughters what was happening. He should have thought about it carefully, but he wasn't in the mood. As soon as she can, Becky, he answered. Becky returned to the living room, and Hank watched as she plopped down in front of the TV. Under no circumstances was he going to take the girls to the hospital in Colorado to see their mother wrapped in bandages like a mummy. He didn't want them to have such memories. 30 minutes later, he had booked a week at Disneyland, reserved a room at one of Mickey's hotels, and purchased plane tickets. They were flying out the next morning. Nicole would have to miss a little bit of preschool, but so be it. Once he got the tickets, a call came in from the hospital. It turned out that Randy had a heart attack and died. All efforts to save her were in vain. Hank asked when exactly it happened. Was it at the precise time when he yelled at her? Maybe he would advise Tina to try yelling at Josh again. No, let her figure it out herself. In the end, Hank had to send Ree's medical insurance information to the hospital to force them to provide him with death documents. He called the local funeral bureau and arranged for her cremation. With her burns, Hank thought he might get a discount, but they told him they would still charge the full price. He asked them to mail him the ashes after they returned from Disney. Being there, the girls were sad that their mom wasn't with them, but they cheered up with enough treats from the Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique. Josh held on until Thursday. Tina no longer shouted at him, so maybe that helped him stay longer. After his death, Tina returned to Colorado and lived with friends because her house had burned down. She behaved like a noble widow for the sake of her children. She told Hank she didn't tell them about Randy. Tina's kids were older than Hank's, and they knew their father was injured in the fire, so it would be harder to ignore all of this. Hank's girls had no idea. For a while, he would continue in the same spirit, but not saying anything bad about their mother was not easy. Soon after they returned from Florida, a delivery guy came to the door with 2 items requiring a signature. The first was a letter from her relatives, the second was a box containing Ree's ashes. The letter requested that Ree's remains be provided to them so they could organize a memorial service and burial in Randy's hometown in Florida. If Hank didn't want to organize anything where he lived, they must have been reaching out to someone else. He realized the letter didn't contain any apologies for covering up Randy, which made his next decision easier. He hired a teenage girl from the neighborhood to babysit the kids, leaving the girls to talk to the sitter about the Disney trip, showing off their belongings and photos on the tablet. Then, Hank headed to a nearby national park with Ree's ashes and a bag slung over his shoulder. He made his way to a remote part of the park, where there were deep cinder-block toilets instead of bathrooms. He took a photo of himself flushing the ashes down the toilet. As he returned to the car, he considered whether therapy might be useful, but the truth was, he wasn't angry anymore, or at least not angry enough to hurt anyone. Tarnishing someone's reputation, though, was a different story. He posted a video on social media of himself flushing the ashes, along with an explanation. Afterward, he wondered if the National Park Service would fine him for polluting a vault toilet. If they did, he'd gladly pay. He never contacted her relatives, but he saw in the newspaper that they had held a memorial service in Jacksonville without him or his daughters. He told the girls that their mom had an accident while she was away and wouldn't be coming back. They reacted just as he expected. Thankfully, they had wonderful daycare teachers who provided help and support. The life insurance payout was a relief. Randy had more coverage than Hank had anticipated. The insurance money made it easier to restructure his work life. He decided his daughters needed more fresh air, especially on playgrounds with lots of children and attractive young mothers, many of whom were sympathetic to his tragic story. He downplayed Randy's infidelity. He was looking for sympathy, not pity. The girls started getting invitations to lots of playdates, where the moms introduced their cute single friends. Hank began to see a path forward. Although Hank never met Tina Turner in person, they did chat on the phone occasionally.